This is Sean speaking with Ralph Hansen. You're a legend within the organization. Ralph, where are you located currently and how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing just fine, Sean. I'm actually in Lake Forest, Illinois, where I live, and I'm in my in-home office today.
So I'm assuming from your building relationship with Tony, and here's a shot that you supplied that was autographed by him. If you could kind of just give a little bit of the background to this, but then we're going to get back into some fraternity lore and some stories that you were a part of.
Well, that's a really historic picture. That was taken on the day that Mr. Hallman was sworn in by George Kilovis as an honorary member of Delta Pi chapter. And that's actually, we had just taken occupancy of the new mansion. And so we had an event that day, and he became a Theta Chi that day. And the furniture that he's sitting on was part of the furniture that he provided for the fraternity house. So that was quite a memory for me. But that was the day he was initiated as a Theta Chi. And I was just recently provided all of his original documents by his grandson. My friend Tony George was gracious enough to give me Tony Hallman's initiation certificate and the letter from George Kilovis welcoming him as Theta Chi to as a member, and that was the actual day that he became a Theta Chi.
Wow. All right, so let's just get back to some of your memories. Do you happen to remember who your pledge trainers were?
Pardon me?
Who your pledge trainers were? Do you happen to remember who was leading pledgeship when you were there?
Actually, I think it was Bob Baxter, who, when I ran for president, he was my big brother. He ran against me, and I did win. And I remember him saying to me that he thought that he had taught me a little too well, but I believe Bob was our pledge trainer. But I honestly can't guarantee that I'm correct.
It's all right. So you said how many guys were in your pledge class?
There was about 25.
And there was about 25 actives in the house.
There were 23.
Right. So you're outnumbering the actives.
Yeah,
so, when guys go into a fraternity, some of them are all gung-ho and some of them don't like the pushback from the actives. So who are some of the more, let's say, just ballsy guys in your pledge class that always would stand up and, not take as much pushback or whatever the other term you want to use? Who were some of those guys that really try to stand up for the other pledges?
Well, there was one guy in particular that was a real character, and there's a lot of stories about him. His name was Frank McClosick, and he was on the football team at Indiana State, and he was in our pledge class, and he was a big, tough guy. And there was one period of time when we got our new fraternity house. It was next to the former teak house, and I made a comment about the teak house that was uncomplimentary. So the teaks decided that they were going to put a hit out on me and said that I better watch out because they were going to find me on campus and beat me up. So for about a week or so, several of the bigger guys in our fraternity, it was another brother named Jerry Gelling, who was about 6'6" or 6'7". They would meet me after class and make sure that the teaks didn't do anything. And Frank got tired of the whole thing, and he was on the football team, and he got up on the bench one time, and there were a lot of teaks on the football team, and he started yelling at the top of his voice, and he just said, "If any one of you guys happens to lay a hand on our president, you're dead." And they that was it. From then on, they believed he was capable of it. So he blew up a cannon in the cemetery, in Calvary Cemetery, which got us in a lot of trouble. And I remember another time he did something that was pretty awful. He brought a dead pig into the fraternity house and had it sitting on top of one of the toilets, which was pretty awful. So, but he was a character, and he was in our class, and he was a tough cookie. You wouldn't. He after he left college, he went on to become a blacksmith.
I don't mean to interject, but since you brought up the pig, I think I've got my own story. I went back as an alum at Ball State, and they had the pig roast for homecoming. And the story is I was running around the house with the head. I also was the mascot of Ball State, so I ended up getting away with a lot of different stuff. But anyway, so let's talk fraternity successes. I know that you were IFC president. You also were the president of the house. And you said that there was a group called the Blue Berets that that you also got involved in. So just talk about some of your successes throughout school and the fraternity's successes that you remember.
Well, the fraternity, like I said, within a matter of 3 years, and that certainly wasn't due just to me. It was due to a lot of the wonderful brothers that we had that were so active, and they were out there recruiting the top guys on campus. But we went from probably the smallest fraternity on campus to the biggest. We had the most beautiful house by far of anyone. And, in my senior year in 1970, like I said, we won first place in every single thing we participated in. And it was incredible. We had a very good grade point average. There were never any issues that ever happened that were, problematic at that time. So Theta Chi really became a force to be reckoned with at Indiana State.
All right, so let's talk about some memories of brothers being there for brothers. That obviously you getting the hit out on you is more of a kind of tongue-in-cheek scenario. But if you can really recall any tragic situations that happened that the brothers had to come together, somebody maybe even getting seriously injured or something that you just remember that went down, that the brothers really had to step up to really help each other on a serious note.
Well, I can't recall anything that was really tragic. I can recall a couple things that happened that actually had a happy ending. When I grew up, I had a neighbor in Hammond, lived next door to me, who also became a member of our fraternity by the name of Joe Huber. And one day I came back from class to the fraternity house, and he was sitting on the stairs crying, just crying and crying. And I go, Joe, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he said, I just talked to my dad. And he goes, my mom died. And I go, oh my God. And he goes, I don't think I can drive home. And I said, well, let's go. I said, he was my next door neighbor in Hammond. And so we started to drive home, and I said, what are the details? What happened? And I can't remember how far down the road we were, but he goes, I don't know. He said, I'm going to call my dad. This was before cell phones didn't exist. You had to stop and go to a pay phone. So he's in a phone booth, and he's talking to his dad. And all of a sudden I look at him, and he's smiling. And I said, Joe, what's going on? He goes, it wasn't my mom that died. It was my grandma, and she had been sick for a long time. But when I talked to my dad said, Mom died, but he was talking about his mom. So I remember that, as a story that stuck in my memory. We didn't really have any other tragedies. I mentioned that one of our fraternity brothers did pass away, but that was after college. He had a disease. He had to have his spleen removed. His name was Don Shoemaker. He was in the picture of us on the yacht. And so I've tried to involve myself with the chapter to the best of my ability, uh, creating opportunities for events. We held a
Right.
we held an event in Indianapolis a couple years back at my club, the Columbia Club. It was a retreat. This year, I provided, I think 50.
How many people did you say went to the event this year? What was the total of alumni that went to the event at the Columbia Club?
I think there were 25 or 30 at least, but they were It was not alumni. It was active chapter members. We did have a couple alumni that came.
All right. So if, part of this is, the alumni, they can hear from each other, but also the current guys at the house and the guys that are, coming into the house. What would be a message to them that you would really want them to understand what they're supposed to get out of fraternity and also life after fraternity? What would you like to instill on them on how they should, really develop as a man and with people and business and whatnot?
Well, there's a saying, you're a Theta Chi for life, which is true. Once you graduate from college, you don't stop being a Theta Chi. You're a Theta Chi forever. And I'm a good example of that. I'm 74 years old, and I'm still hanging out with the college kids and having them come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And a couple times a year, I invite the whole chapter out for a pizza party. And anytime any Theta Chi, be it an alumni or an active member, has ever contacted me and wanted a reference or help finding a job, I've been very fortunate in being able to help a number of the brothers find employment, quite a few actually. And I'm always there ready to help. If somebody's in a jam and I'm in a position to help them out with their tuition, or if they've got a financial issue, I and the other members of the fraternity that are alumni have been very generous and have helped. So you stay a member for your whole life, and the motto of Theta Chi is the helping hand. So that's our obligation and pleasure to be able to assist these young men today that are trying to create a life for themselves in a future. And from people like myself that have been around and experienced amazing things through the fraternity, the friendships that I've made that all started with Theta Chi, it's something that you have, and I encourage them all to stay with the fraternity, stay active, be a part of it, join the alumni organization once you graduate, come to homecoming, and take advantage of all the opportunities. The brotherhood is something that's a wonderful thing to experience, and I treasure it.
Well, I know that they're going to be building out a new website to be able to hold these video call with image interviews as well as audio just over the phone. And I think that a bigger piece, besides reminiscing and hearing all these stories, is kind of what you said, being able to connect with alumni. So there'll be a way for, even now at Theta Chi Delta Pi chapter stories.com, alumni can put in their contact info, what they're currently doing, their current job, company, website, and then there's a view page that people can start seeing that. So I think that through this whole process, being able to really not just re-engage the guys for the stories, but so they can really utilize the network that already exists and making it an easy way for them to get a hold of everybody. Yeah. What do you think of that whole mission and the whole plan?
Well, I think it's fantastic. And like we were saying earlier, there's a number of members of the fraternity that have got a really good feel for the history of Theta Chi. I strongly encourage you to get a hold of Rob Hasbrook, as we call him,
right,
and talk with him. He's a legend in Theta Chi. Rick Ward, the owner of the facility, he is the person that has created that beautiful facility that you see with the basketball court and the fire pit and beautiful parking lot. Without him, we wouldn't have that today. So there's a number of others that I think would be able to add a lot to this. And I don't mean to omit anyone because there's so many, but when you're looking at history, I know that Rob could be a very, very interesting person for you to interview.
Well, something that ended up happening with our fraternity through Ball State was guys started sponsoring other guys' interviews because they wanted those people from their era to talk. And if you think about it, you've got 50 years of alum, right, that are alive. And one guy might have the contact info of some other guys at his age, but the alumni board might not. So it really becomes kind of, the effort, and it gets put on the onus of the individual alum to let the other alum know that they can be a part of this. And it's not just for the alum to hear it, the actives and the rushies, but it's for their kids and grandkids to hear their legacy, because everybody gets copies of their own. We're just going to have a central place to house everything. So I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the other alumni?
Well, I just want to say that being a member of Theta Chi fraternity has been one of the most important aspects of my life. I'm enormously proud to be a Theta Chi and be a Delta Pi chapter member. I've created friendships that have lasted throughout my life that are extremely meaningful to me. And never for 1 minute did I ever regret the decision to pledge and become a member. And I really want to encourage all the other alumni that see this. If you haven't been active in the past, please get active and become a part of the organization. The dues aren't very much, but they keep you in contact. So thank you all for letting me talk today. And I look forward to seeing the final result. I like the concept of what you're doing, and I appreciate you, Sean, for putting this all together, and Garrett Ackles for helping get it started.
Well, it's going to be a fun road. I know that this coming month in July is when they're going to be discussing with the board to be able to launch. And I know they're also working on the new site. So it's going to be an exciting time to be able to save a lot of the stories. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to be a part of it and help. Eventually, we might even be able to get some of the younger guys to be able to help do the interviews and down the road. But anyway, Ralph, I appreciate your time, and it's always a pleasure. It was great seeing you out at the track for the vintage running last weekend.
Well, I'll be seeing. I'm going to be back at the Speedway. I'll be out there for the Brickyard 400, the NASCAR race, and there's another road race, another Grand Prix later in the summer. So I'll be out at the track at least 2 more times this summer. So I'll be around, and I'll see you in our suite.
All right. It sounds good.
All right.
Well, thank you for your time. Just stay in the line, but I'm going to close this one out.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.